The first question I wrote down was obviously like your uh, really simple. How did you become interested in filmmaking and your major in college, I believe?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure. All right. So if you want, we can go all the way back to the beginning. Well, it goes back to my brother, my older brother, John. When he was in high school, he was part of the TV studio there and also was in all the musicals as well. So looking up to him, he wanted to be the next Spielberg back in the 90s. So I was always around him. He was always filming us, doing stuff like that. And he wanted to go to college for film. We couldn't afford NYU at the time, so he went to Rutgers in New Jersey, is where we were from. And so he went to Rutgers. And then in 1999, my first cinematic um, love happened was after seeing Phantom Menace, I decided I wanted to make my own Star Wars films. And so I got my parents a high 8mm camera, and I have all this footage of me playing with my Star Wars toys, making stop animation films with my Star Wars toys, conducting with a TV antenna the Duel of Fate song, and just a plethora of all this footage of I was Star Wars kid before Star Wars kid was probably even born. So, but yeah, so that was my love of like filming things. So then at every family gathering, I was filming this, filming that. Fast forward to high school, and the two movies that really inspired me to really be in cinema were Christopher Nolan's film Memento, which came out in 2000. That film just blew my mind the way that it started at the end and went backwards in time. I love anything with time travel, anything with timing of, bending a genre. And then, so that was 2000. And then in 2004, my senior year of high school in the fall, Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind came out, directed by Michel Gondry, starring Jim Carrey, Kate Winslet, and written by Charlie Kaufman. And what he did with all the in-camera special effects and all these things, that also just blew my mind of wanting to tell stories in a very, abstract way. So then fast forward to December of 2004, going into January of 2005, in that winter break, I decided to make a movie, and I was going to submit that to colleges for my exception for, getting accepted to college. So I made this film called The Fortune Cookie, and I filmed all this footage with dialogue and all this story at my dad's pharmacy, in the back of his pharmacy in Port Richmond, PA. He had an old movie theater from like the 40s or the 50s. So I filmed all this stuff. And then on the drive home, I decided to watch some of it. I was looking at it, and then I decided to film the car ride home. Meaning to basically then what happened was I recorded over everything I had just recorded, because this was on tape. This is on mini
Hmm.
DV. So everything I had just recorded was gone. So I had to scrap all that, and the deadline for submission to Rutgers was on Monday. So then on Friday, my friend and I, who was in the film with me, I just went over to his house. We filmed him like waking up, doing this whole thing, and that's what was the basis of the Fortune Cookie. It was basically turned out to be a 9-minute black and white music video. So then that weekend, I was doing all the music, the drums at 4 in the morning one night, using my dad's synthesizer to create the score. And then I was editing it on a HP PC on like Movie Maker. And so
Oh,
that's why it was a music video, because I didn't know how to capture the audio. I was only able to capture the video. Mind you,
yeah.
this is 2005. So then I edit the video, and I submit it. And my brother at the time was staying at our house, and he was just like, "Oh, dude, I don't know if that's good or whatever." And he was just like, "I don't think that's going to be well." And I just submitted it, accepting that I was going to go to a community college, probably not getting in. I had a 2.8 or 9 GPA. And then lo and behold, in April, I got the envelope in the mail from Rutgers that I got accepted to Mason Gross School of the Arts, and was just like, wow, that was just it was just a crazy, special moment of, the universe will take care of you. So
Hmm.
that was how I got into Rutgers. But going into Rutgers, I was like, I'm going to be the next Spielberg, the next Christopher Nolan. I want to make all these films. First day of Rutgers at Mason Gross School of the Arts, in my video class, video like one, it's all experimental video. The
Hmm.
teacher I had, Hassan Allah, he showed me the past seniors videos, and I was like, what is this? It doesn't make any sense. Where's our script writing class? So then I kind of shifted towards more experimental filmmaking. So then I fell in love with the likes of David Lynch and some of those filmmakers. And there was Louis Buñuel, who worked with Salvador Dali on the film Un Shaman de Luz, great little experimental film from the 20s, I think, or something. But that was where I kind of got my love of filmmaking then. I was also interning at NBC in the fall, late night with Jimmy Fallon, and in the spring, SNL. So that was another, so all the experience I got and my love of filmmaking and some of my skills in filmmaking have been either from school, but also from all my internships working, in the business and working afterwards at these shoots that I would be the slate person and I would have to point the slate at the two cameras and say common mark A, B, and slate. And that's how they would sync all the cameras up. But yeah, it's just all the stuff that I've learned has just been from trial and error, experience, people, but yeah, and it's kind of culminated in the last few months of actually, getting compensated for doing all this video work that on the side in the last 5 years, I've tried to build up my business of Masino Media as like a production company, but I was only doing, my dad's retirement video or my grandfather's 90th birthday video and, didn't get really paid for it, but it's all about like, either working for free, but getting people to notice you. And then eventually it'll all come out in the end and you're doing what you love and being able to put out, awesome products. And especially at a time like this, video editors and filmmaking, maybe you can't get it into a theater, but there is this little thing called YouTube and the internet that you can basically for free put out your information and put out your videos for billions of people to see. And it's a great time to be creating your own content.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, so you got into experimental film. I've always, maybe it's because I'm not in college yet and I haven't had that experience, but I've always leaned towards storytelling more than anything because, I know like experimental film, it's a different type of storytelling. And I guess, so my question is like, in your mind, what's the difference? Like when you're trying to tell like a blockbuster movie story per se, like a Star Wars story, like you mentioned, or like a Lord of the Rings story or Blade Runner story. Like what's the difference to you between that and like an experimental film like you made for the Fortune Cookie or something?
Yeah, so and that's what was the interesting thing. I went in thinking it was going to be a storytelling thing, but then it wasn't. So then I was in for the 4 or 5 years I did go to college. I was, experimental filmmaking is more of you don't have a script. So you're either telling a story or you're trying to tell a story, but through moods, or you're trying to create a emotion for the viewer to experience, whether it's an emotion of fear or uneasiness or joy or something. And for me, it was kind of a way of, I wasn't the best writer in college, and I don't associate myself as a writer, but I am in a sense that I tell stories so well, and I have so many stories in my mind. It's just, it's sometimes it's difficult to get it from a mind to my hand to a pencil or a paper. But with storytelling, I've done that. I've been able to do that a little bit more. If you give me a script and I help direct some of the footage or I'm editing, I'm really good at doing that. And that's I love just putting together a story. I've always wanted to do that. But for me, it was just, that was my outlet at the time, was doing this experimental filmmaking. And, for the most part, by experimental filmmaking, it's just, you maybe don't have a script and there's either you have no script and you're just throwing stuff on a painting like Jackson Pollock, where it's abstract, or you're doing just, there is some type of a story, but there's not like a straight through line to get there. It's, you kind of just go off and just randomness happens.
So talking about your time at Rutgers, I guess, so what would you say like the importance of film school is? Because like, I'm sure there are people obviously around the world who can't afford film school or are always looking for ways, like on YouTube, like nowadays you can go on YouTube and like find tutorials on everything. And like, personally, I've learned a lot from doing that, but like if you're trying to like really get yourself out there and get yourself noticed and like maybe try to tell a story like you're talking about, like how important would you say going to film school is, even if it's like not like an NYU or a USC or something, but just in general?
So yeah, and I've always gone back and forth with this in the last 10 years since 10 years since I graduated. Wow, I graduated in 2010. But no, I always was like, oh, if I had gone to NYU, I've seen these people that, like, if you go to NYU and you have the means to do it, you know, you kind of have a step up a little bit because you're working with teachers and professors who are in the business, and you just are more exposed to those people. And you know,
It
but
gives you
I
more
also, it
connections.
gives you more connections. But also, I think the importance of just any film school, even if it's at a local college, community college, or at Rutgers, which of course now Rutgers has a huge digital filmmaking, like storytelling type of school there
Hmm.
now, which they didn't have back then. It's you know, just it goes the ebbs and flows of what is, you know, the technology. I went to school from 2005 to 2010, so you know, like I was filming on mini DV and editing on iMac, so it was like, you know, and YouTube was just a baby. I mean, I remember I was on YouTube in 2006 to just upload a video back when you couldn't upload videos longer than 10 minutes. You had to have a special like approval, and now you can, I mean, you can, the sky's the limit. But
Yeah.
that's just where I was at that one time where it was still, you had to be in New York or in LA or somewhere to really make it big. But with film schools, the great thing about it is the structure of creating your own piece of film, and whether it's working on script writing and that, and that's the one thing I wish I had, was a script writing class. Or you know, I really had to learn all my proper, you know, lighting and sound techniques from my internships, whether it was at a news show at PBS in New York. You know, that's where I learned 3-point lighting and proper sound, what sound levels you want, how do you want to mic someone for a 2-person camera interview. So that was all the stuff I learned on my internships and not in school, because again, it was more experimental film. They weren't teaching that, and you would have to get a journalism major at that time to get some of that level of tech TV studio type thing.
Hmm.
But yeah, but I think with film school, wherever you go, it's a great way to, you know, like anyone going to film school or even just any video school in the last 5 years, you're going to know Premiere, you're going to know Final Cut, you're going to know all these tools that I didn't know. Like all my tools and skills that I learned from Final Cut Pro are pretty much non-existent now. I mean, rendering now is kind of, you know, certain things is a thing of the past if you have certain software. But what I do have is learn my editing skills, which is something that, you know, maybe a teacher can't teach you, just learning from trial and error of, you know, keep your stuff short. I was always making these 15-minute videos, and my teachers were like, Jeff, you got to keep it short. Nobody's going to want to watch 15 minutes of just abstract stuff, or, you know, just snow falling or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's the teachers and what you learn from them, but also if you can, you know, get that experience. So whether it's at NYU or a local school, you know, I think there is some very good values to learning that and just giving you a structure to create that stuff. Whereas if you're just doing it on your own while you're in high school, or if you're doing another major, you know, you don't have that outlet to create that work.
Hmm. So you mentioned like editing a lot.
Hmm.
I mean, I know that's sort of your thing.
Hmm.
That's part of film that you've gotten really interested in. So I guess, like, how did you get in, like, into all that? Do you just like the idea of just bringing everything together into one thing, or is it just the process that you enjoy?
It's funny because, you know, it was editing, you know, usually if you're, you know, when you're a bubbling filmmaker, you got to do all the things. You got to do the cinematography, you got to do the editing and all the directing and stuff. But for me, it was just, that was what our classes was just editing. And so we would film stuff, but then in the editing process is where I would make certain things experimental, doing some like jump cuts or slow-mo, or they have, you know, the solarizing and layering and doing the opacity and, you know, having some, you know, stuff like that. Now, back in college, I didn't really get into green screen, into that, all of that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And I did take one After Effects class, which was crazy because I worked 5 hours on this one thing, and it was just 5 seconds of the video,
Yeah.
because that's just how time consuming this is. But but yeah, just with editing, it was just something where, oh, you want me to put that video together, or, you know, edit this thing together and put some music under it. It was just something that I had to do for school. But then after school, you know, I was just able to, you know, it was just one way to either pay some bills, but like also just to create stuff. One of my favorite things to do is music video. Music video editing is some of my favorite things. I love cutting the video to the music, or, you know, or just telling a story through music videos. And I was able to do a bunch of music videos from some of my brother's bands. And they're some of the most fun I've had over the last 10 years. A lot of people started in that music video genre because it's, you know, something quick and easy, and it gets your name out there, but you can also, you know, either do storytelling or just do a straight up, you know, fun little, you know, music video.
Yeah. I know I've been working with Nate a lot to do the music for his films, and we're actually working on our new short film, and I'm so excited to start doing the music for that. But basically, I'm just interested in music and film and how the sound really makes the film, the suspense, the intensity, everything that you can feel just from the music. So how did you become interested in that portion of it, if you are at all?
Oh yeah, and it's funny when I can, let's rewind and go back to my whole life story of cinema. Music is hand in hand. It is. I've, you know, loved music since I was a little kid. In preschool, there's a picture of me banging a drum in the newspaper with my little MC Hammer little cut in my hair. And I've just loved music ever since. My dad has played music for years, so it was just, we had instruments all the time. So, you know, in middle school, elementary school through high school, I played drums in the drum line. I was in marching band. And with making that first film I made for college acceptance, I did all the music. And, you know, I had just taken a music theory class senior year of high school, so I was kind of a little bit noodling around the piano. But sound and music in films for me is also a love. So, and then going into college, not only was my videos great, but my professors were always just aghast at some of the sounds that I was creating. I was also in a band in high school. And so a lot of the songs that we did in there, I would either repurpose, because we never really made it big, but I would repurpose on the piano. Or my dad had an electric organ at home, and so I used that a lot. I'll talk about my experimental filmmaking. Experimental sound is where I'm so happy and just loving that moment of using. I had a 4-track Tascam recorder and with a built-in microphone, and so I would do these things where I would have an electric shaver, and I would turn it on, and then as soon as I get close to the 4-track, I would put it on the 4-track, and it would create this like this crazy tractor trail, so like digging sound effect, and I use that in a lot of my things. And then I also got to take a digital audio class in college, which was one of my favorite classes. And on top of that, I was in the Rutgers Glee Club because I was a singer, loving musical theater on top of that. So it's all one and the same. Movies, theater, music, in my life, Jeff Masino is just encompassing in all that. So not only was I filming it and editing it, but I was doing all the music for it. But yeah, so this digital audio class, I was introduced to what's his name? Frank Zappa, an amazing musician from the late 60s who started with like experimental music in that time of Rolling Stones and the Beatles. But there's this great album called We're Only in It for the Money, and he just was a concept album ahead of its time, doing crazy things with just melodies, but also, you know, weird sound effects and speeding up the tape and slowing it down and doing all this weird stuff. But that's also, David Lynch is known for his sound and the scores that he uses and all that. Another great film that I love the music in is The Conversation, which was Francis Ford Coppola's film he made in between these two little movies called Godfather and Godfather Part 2. Literally made this tiny film with Gene Hackman. He's a surveillance person and was paid to surveil some people. And then crazy stuff happened, and this like mystery, and there's some murders happening. But Walter Murch, who was this famous sound designer from the 60s and 70s, working with George Lucas and did all the sound for it. And then John Barry, I think his name is, he did the music for it. And it's just this piano music, but it's so haunting. And I love music in movies. John Williams is one of the best. I mean, he is probably the quintessential score, movie, blockbuster, everything from Raiders of the Lost Ark, Star Wars. You know, I mean, man has million Oscars. But also there's some, Michael Giacchino is more of a modern one that I love. but there's just some great music score makers who, you know, create the score, and it's a whole extra thing, it's a whole actor in itself. So music in any type of video, and that's why I love music videos, is because you get to work with the visuals and the music, putting them together. But that's the other thing, I'll just say now, is when you're creating your own films or your own music or anything, you create it for yourself. And if you like it, that's all that matters. People are going to probably think it sucks, or it's too long, or it's too short. But if you make it for that you're going to like, there's definitely got to be at least one person else in the world who's going to say, you know what, that's really cool too. And then it's just, there's so many out there. If you're making something to appease the masses, that's when you have Justice League or some of these other movies that are just, they're just, you know, cookie cutter. And you're just, why did they do that? Because these producers got in the way, and they listened to, you know, these test screenings, and, you know, well, it should have this and that. But, you know, if you let someone just have free range on creating something, for the most part, it's great. It might be a terrible disaster, but it's your terrible disaster.
So filmmaking is great, and like doing stuff like that you enjoy is also like, I of course, like you should always do that, but you also, in this world, you have to make money. So like how have you like gone about getting jobs or referrals, or like I guess just trying to pay the bills, you know?
Yeah, and that's the toughest thing too. And I've from some of my friends I had at college, and some of the contacts I made at my internships, you know, out of college, the first gig I had out of college was working for this skincare company that was based in Edison, New Jersey. And I would just go to this woman's, place of business, and with my little Canon 7D, filming her, putting on the makeup, or we did these little films at her house, like this huge house. And, you know, it was like different instances of what she could use her products for. So it was product placement, but I did get paid for it. And that was just through something at my college. Somebody knew somebody, and I was like, sure, yeah. I was always looking to do. See, in college, I was put in this experimental video box, but I always wanted to branch out and do media or entertainment or news. So I did that first. And then from one of my past internships at Nightly Business Report, which was a daily business show based in New York, I there was somebody got fired because they did something wrong or something. Usually all my jobs I've gotten in the last 10 years was somebody either left or somebody got fired because they were terrible, and I came in and had to like pick up some pieces from that. But no, I got hired as a ENG assistant, which was basically I was hired to help with going out and do daily shoots, but working in the news. So that was one way that paid the bills. I worked at NBR for a year, and then 3 months later, I worked at NJTV up in North Jersey, and I worked there for about three years. And, you know, I learned a lot. And, you know, I also learned about importance of researching and gathering materials. I'm trying to remember now, paying for the bills. So, but for that, then that's one way to pay for the bills, where you have to work either in a union, or you, for production assistant wise, I've heard all these stories of, you know, let's say you go to film school and then you start as a PA on a film. And that's, you know, can be ranging from getting coffee for someone, or, you know, hanging out with extras, or doing this or that, or doing some research. And from what I knew from some of my friends who were, you know, either actors or wanted to be directors, you had to be a PA on a film for a while. But then if you look at one of the best examples is, I think it was on Batman Begins, Christopher Nolan's assistant was this guy, Jordan something, you know, he was his assistant. So if like you always look at the credits, you see the assistant to this director. And then he was his assistant. So you think about it, he was always with Christopher Nolan, the director of Batman Begins, this huge big time director. He's his assistant. He's there all the time. So if you're able to show your personality and get your, you know, show them, oh, I actually do this. The next on Dark Knight, he was associate producer. So that's a huge bump from being an assistant to associate producer. And then for The Dark Knight Rises, he was like producer of Christopher Nolan's like production company and stuff. And so I've always seen these people, like that's one way to do it, but that you're also fighting with hundreds of thousands of other people doing that. So now, besides trying to go that way, where you're working, you know, in the union, working your way up, what you both are doing with this off the script films is you're doing the other way of putting out your content yourself on YouTube, and hoping it goes viral, and you can either get ad revenue from YouTube, which there's people have been doing that, yoga instructors, all these people. If you have a million subscribers, you can get those ads from Grammarly. I mean, Grammarly's paying your bills then. But you're doing it one of the ways now that I wish I had back when I was in high school and college.